This video is brought to you by Raycon.
When's the last time you felt rich? Was it when you greedily clutched your very first $20 bill? Or when you paid off the loans on your Jetta? Or when you treated your 5 closest friends to caviar and champagne on a sunset cruise to Belize? If it's been a minute since you checked your bank account and grinned, you're not alone. These days, nobody seems to feel rich, not even people who literally are. Late last year, a whopping 29% of millionaires reported feeling poor. But before you pour out 29% of your PBR in solidarity with those struggling plastic surgeons, it's worth asking, why do we all still feel as broke as we did when we were blending blizzards at Dairy Queen? Is poverty a state of mind, a consequence of bad spending habits, or something way more complex? Let's explore in this video the real reason you feel broke. But before we get into it, I wanted to talk about this video's sponsor, Raycon. Raycon's everyday earbuds look sleek and bring high sound quality to everything I listen to, whether it's music, podcasts, or just watching TV. Plus, they're comfortable to wear, thanks to optimized gel tips that adapt to the contours of your ears. This design helps them stay put no matter what, even if you're exercising, or in my case, practicing my headbanging technique for the next heavy metal concert I go to. Raycon's everyday earbuds offer 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life, so you can get through an entire workday of Zoom calls without worrying they're gonna cut out. And they're the perfect choice for your summer vacation plans. I love to travel, and Raycon's noise isolation feature is essential to having a peaceful airplane experience. Never again will I be kept awake on a red-eye by screaming babies. And when I need to pay attention to in-flight announcements or snag some airplane pretzels, I can easily tap to toggle Raycon's awareness mode, which lets me hear what's going on without me pausing what I'm listening to. The company was co-founded by Ray J, and celebrities like Snoop Dogg and Melissa Etheridge are obsessed with Raycons. Raycon's wireless earbuds are available in a range of fun colors and patterns to fit every style, and a variety of fit options to fit every ear. Not to mention that they offer quality audio at half the price of other premium brands. And if you don't love them as much as I do, no sweat. Raycon's got you covered with their 30-day free return policy. So click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/wisecrack for 15% off. That's buyraycon.com/wisecrack for 15% off your purchase. And now, back to the show. Note that we're looking at this through an American lens. But as always, we urge our further flung friends across the globe to let us know why their country is better at everything in the comments. Now, there's a popular conception of America as a middle-class country. Indeed, more than half of Americans consider themselves members of that 55-inch flat-screen TV, day drunk out on Carnival Cruise demographic. That's in spite of the fact that 2 out of 3 of us couldn't afford a $400 emergency expense. And this is fitting, because for most of American history, the middle class has been more of a dream than a reality. The first hints of an American middle class began taking shape in the mid-19th century, with the emergence of the white-collar worker. But it wasn't really until the 1920s that a process began in which, according to scholar Lawrence R. Samuel, powerful economic, social, and political factors worked together in the United States to forge what many historians consider to be the first genuine mass middle class in history. Urbanization and industrialization kickstarted the process. Then came FDR's New Deal, which, following the trauma of the Great Depression, provided a modicum of financial security to all. It was then solidified in the economic boom after World War II, accompanied by the GI Bill, which, short-term, got 8 million veterans a college degree on the cheap. As the post-war economy boomed, according to Samuel, the vast majority of Americans were, or at least acted as if they were, middle class, a remarkable transformation in national identity. Note that a number of policies and norms ensured that this middle class was whiter than raisins in a potato salad. It's no coincidence that, with the blossoming of the fledgling middle class in the 1920s, consumer culture came into full swing. Higher production capacity meant there was more to sell, and a burgeoning middle class meant more people to sell it to, albeit with a substantial hiccup of the Great Depression. The phenomenon of the consumer citizen, or person who relates to their society primarily via consumption choices, began to gain traction. In the post-war years, consumer spending would become a key symbol of the American way of life, especially for its middle class. This phenomenon was famously identified decades earlier by sociologist Thorstein Veblen, who dubbed it conspicuous consumption, or any material spending that offers the spender elevated social status. Importantly, during the Cold War, buying toasters and microwaves also offered an attractive contrast to the evils of communism, according to Samuel. This elevated consumer spending from mere frivolity to a key element of the American character. As retail analyst Victor Lebeau remarked at the time, our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction, in consumption. Yeah, he really said that. Now, in the days of more expensive handcrafted goods, the stuff you own used to be a sign of class status. But with rampant mass production driving costs down, middle-class folks could increasingly afford the same products as wealthy people, and cosplaying a Vanderbilt turned out to be a pretty fun hang. Founder of modern marketing Edward Bernays observed of the consumer that a thing may be desired not for its intrinsic worth or usefulness, but because he has unconsciously come to see in it a symbol of social position, an evidence of his success. You could argue that Americans confirmed their middle-class status every time they checked out at Macy's. Philosopher Herbert Marcuse observed as much in 1964, writing that the people recognize themselves in their commodities. They find their soul in their automobile, hi-fi set, split-level home, kitchen equipment. Product diversification would blossom in the 70s and 80s, and as sociologist Wolfgang Streeck writes, the closer products came to the specific preferences of consumers, the more consumers turned out to be willing to pay. And indeed, the harder they were prepared to work and the more they were prepared to borrow for the purchasing power needed to participate in the new paradigm of economic growth. Everything from watches to wine became hyper-specialized and bougie. Marcuse similarly argued that the more we associate ourselves with what we buy, the more we're down to grind away at work to buy more of it. He called this voluntary servitude, wherein we're not actively being enslaved or forced to work. Rather, we're simply convinced that we should spend most of our time working so we can consume all the things we desire in our increasingly sparse free time. A lot of us no longer question if it's really worth giving up most of our lives to snag that beloved sound system or designer basketball jersey or bubble machine. And we often tend to assume that people who don't grind hard enough simply don't deserve to have nice stuff. Or any stuff, for that matter. Or that not having nice stuff must mean your bones are fundamentally lazy.
I mean, it's one banana, Michael. What could it cost? $10?
Consumption is the central way we understand social and economic status in the US. And this was not an inevitability. As we've talked about before, you can't create a fast-paced consumer economy overnight. That shit takes work. And as the consumer economy ran at a faster clip, its overlords needed new strategies to peddle their wares. As journalist Vance Packard observed, just as immense effort was being devoted to persuading people to buy things they did not actually need, manufacturers also began the intentional design of inferior items, which came to be known as planned obsolescence. Packard identified two versions of this. First, functional obsolescence, in which a product is simply designed to wear out quickly, and second, psychological obsolescence, in which products are, as Packard puts it, designed to become obsolete in the mind of the consumer, even sooner than the components used to make them will fail. This form really blossomed in the 50s, when we saw the emergence of design fads in products that had once been timeless. Once lifelong companions, changing up your dining room chair, your overcoat, or your car became a new way to confirm your status in society. What all this means is that if you're an American watching this, your parents and grandparents were probably good little consumer boys and girls just like you. Their habits were in part facilitated by what began as metal money in 1918, gained popularity as the Charge It and Diners Club cards in the 1940s, and matured into a credit card industry that is now your favorite pen pal. But while credit cards allowed lots of people to spend more than they earned, thus injecting some precarity into the punch bowl, the middle class was hardly hanging on by a financial thread. It's no secret that a number of economic and social policies enacted since the 1960s have eroded the strong middle class of the post-war years. So, unsurprisingly, when you flash forward to today, being broke is almost an inevitability for most young people. It doesn't help that many of us came of age amidst the Great Recession, endless wars, and the rise and yup, still rising student loan debts. Growing wealth can feel like fighting the Undertaker in a steel cage. And if wasn't precarious enough, enter stage right, wage stagnation. For a long time, paychecks simply haven't kept up with increasing worker productivity, much less ever-growing inflation. As our chums at the Economic Policy Institute put it, wage stagnation for the vast majority was not created by abstract economic trends. Rather, wages were suppressed by policy choices made on behalf of those with the most income, wealth, and power. In the past few decades, the American economy generated lots of income and wealth that would have allowed substantial living standard gains for every family. Especially since the Reagan era, reigning economic policies have disempowered workers and given corporations carte blanche to go buck wild in the name of shareholder profits. And here's where we gotta talk about the invisible $5 egg in the room: inflation. While prices on healthcare, housing, and higher education have been soaring over past decades, and as noted, wages haven't even begun to keep up, the recent surge in prices for everyday goods has a lot of us choosing between milk, eggs, bread, or discount T-Swift tickets that very reliable man on Craigslist will definitely email you the day of. Now, economists disagree on what's causing inflation. For his part, journalist Philip Inman attributes it largely to greedflation, essentially a term for corporate price gouging. He writes that companies sneaking through mega price rises using the war and the pandemic as cover are stealing everyone's incomes. They are 21st century war profiteers and should be recognized as such. But even regardless of the cause, the way we see it, there are two undeniable things going on. Number one, simultaneous inflation and wage stagnation means most of us are losing spending power. And number two, federal efforts to stamp out inflation are hurting us even more. That's because the main tool to fight inflation, the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, is intended to suppress the economy's supposedly relentless growth. But with wages already faltering, increased interest rates simply punish the working and middle classes. As former Secretary of Labor Robert Bernard Reich explains in The Guardian, higher interest rates will slow economic growth and result in softer labor market conditions, a euphemism for lower wage increases and fewer jobs. In short, first inflation hurts our buying power, then the government's attempts to stamp out inflation hurts our wages and livelihoods. It's a double stuffed sandwich. So amidst the double whammy of wage stagnation and inflation, are we fated to feel poor all the time, even if we just landed a new job? And how does feeling economically disempowered affect our behavior? In recent years, personal finance experts will often point to something called lifestyle creep or lifestyle inflation as a major culprit. Lifestyle creep basically describes our all too familiar tendency to increase our expenses and decrease our savings as we make more money. This can happen either with pay raises or with paying off debt, both of which make us feel rich. And when we feel rich, we go on shopping sprees instead of saving for retirement. Financial advisors and their ilk warn that lifestyle creep prevents us from investing in our futures, while Forbes describes it as a form of running in place. In literal terms, it manifests as more than half of folks who make over $100,000 per year living paycheck to paycheck. According to the experts, it's a matter of bad planning. We're a nation of impulse buyers, splurging on new gizmos instead of saving up for a window room and a swanky retirement home. But we think this is a case where blaming a society-wide phenomenon on individuals' bad choices kind of misses the mark. Sure, we all could be making better choices with our finances, but we don't exist in a vacuum. A huge aspect of our economy is unlimited consumer choice, which effectively means that there are products and services to match every economic demographic. I mean, you can buy, say, a pepper shaker for $5 or $20 or $200. You can go running and lift weights at home for basically free, or pay $10 to work out at Crunch, or upgrade to Equinox, or just pay a personal trainer to politely ignore the camera crew hanging out at your home gym. Once we reach a higher income level, and especially in the era of hyper-targeted digital advertising, we're immediately met with an attractive laundry list of shiny new things we can suddenly technically afford, and what's more, should pay for if we want to confirm our new class status. As we've established, the consumer citizen who over-identifies with the they own was central to the growth and maturation of America's economy. It's also created a climate where your very class status can feel contingent on owning the right stuff. In an economy that's based on endless growth and planned obsolescence, there's only too many eager folks ready to sell whatever will make us feel like we finally made it. And in our era of commodified self-care, spending money is often even reframed as being kind to ourselves. Whether that comes in the form of Chinese takeout with $15 service fees, or a weekend in an Airbnb cabin upstate with $200 cleaning fees.
3 words for you: treat yourself.
The reality is that the consumption required to appear middle class today makes the middle class hood of the 1950s, with its 2-car garage, 1 small TV, and 1 road trip a year, look positively frugal. Putting a record player on your Charge-It card back in 1958 is a lot different than accumulating $20,000 of debt trying to cut it as an unpaid intern in New York City today. And the advanced consumer economy has changed more than just the stuff we need to buy to keep up with our friends. It's changed the way we conceive of our own identities. As Streak writes, commercialization has created opportunities, and apparently quite attractive ones, for a new type of sociation. That is, a way for individuals to link up to others and thereby define their place in the world. It provides a mechanism that allows people to conceive of an act of purchase as an act of self-identification and self-presentation. One that sets the individual apart from some social groups while uniting him or her with others. Buying things helps us confirm our membership in whichever groups we find desirable. Opting out of conspicuous consumption means opting out of certain desirable elements of social life. Yes, lifestyle creep does occur on an individual level, but it's also a reflection on the fact that a lot of aspects of life are more expensive than ever, and yet also more important than ever in protecting our class status. You need a different Oxford shirt for every day of the week to protect your status as a white-collar worker. You need to get your kids some sweet kicks to protect their status as, a cool kid who doesn't deserve to be stuffed in a locker. In an age where consumption has basically become a primary means of political and social expression, is it any surprise that we all suck at saving? But what do you guys think? Why does it feel like we're never getting any closer to financial solvency? Is the problem a reflection of our messed up consumer culture? Or do we all just need to download a good budgeting app? Let us know in the comments. Thanks to our patrons for your support, and thanks to all of you for consciously consuming our videos, for liking and subscribing, and for always leaving kind, well thought out, never reactionary sentiments in the comments that we cannot wait to read. Catch you later.